Good evening, and welcome to the March 23rd, 2021 Planning and Zoning meeting. Roll call.
Yes, Garrett.
Here.
Templin.
Here.
Lane.
Here. Here.
McPherson.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
And Fisher.
Here.
Okay, Manson is absent this evening.
Okay. Item number 3, general business. Approve the Planning Commission agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Approved. Approve the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting held on January 26, 2020. Everybody get a chance to read them?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Do what?
Presented.
I couldn't tell who
We
that
have
was.
a motion to approve as presented by Lane.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Item C, disclosure of conflict of interest. Do we have any?
Other than none.
Okay. Item D, disclosure of outside communications regarding commission business. Do we have any there?
None.
Only commission I had was
Okay.
talking to Brad when he delivered the package.
Item 4, call to public. Members of the public who wish to address the Planning Commission regarding items not on the agenda may do so at this time. Any presentation is for information purposes only. No action will be taken. There's a 4-minute time limit. Do we have anybody on for?
No, I
call to
don't see
public?
anybody in the video conference, and we didn't get any emails this week requesting that.
Close the call to public. No public hearing. No old business, new business. Item A, discuss text amendment allowing specialty contractors in the C2 zoning district.
There's
Brad?
Todd. How you doing?
Sorry for practice.
Oh, no problem.
How you doing?
Hey, Todd.
How's it going, Todd?
All right, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners. What you have before you is our only agenda item. Actually, we do have a discussion item a little bit after this, but came to aware that Planning Commissioner Fisher is interested in purchasing a property and relocating his plumbing business and putting a new structure up on that location. And upon review of the uses in the C2 zoning district, plumbing, heating, and air conditioning contractors fall under construction type codes under the NICS categories, as that's what DeSoto uses to distinguish different types of businesses up and down our zoning code. And I included our entire packet so you can see all the categories in all the zoning districts. And as you can see, item 23 or line 23, construction, specialty trade contractors, which include plumbing, heating, air conditioning, flooring, framing, roofing, concrete work, electricians, things like that, all fall within construction, and none of those would be allowed in the C2 zoning district. And it seemed, I guess nobody really checked before, because we do have a couple of contracting companies currently operating in the C2 district. So in addition to finding out this information for Tim's business, we also have a couple that are already operating in the C2 district. So I think it's something that Mike and I put together. We thought we should probably get this addressed. But of course, doing a text amendment, typically what we've done is we bring it to the Planning Commission, we explain the situation, get your feedback before we schedule a public hearing. So if there's some sort of pushback or additional fencing requirements or landscaping, things like that, that we can use towards this use, if you'd think that's appropriate, we can certainly add those to the text amendment and change those things. And simply enough, you could also just say we're going to put a P in the box and call it good, and it's permitted, and then there's be no additional changes. Now, everything in the C2 district still has to go through a site plan review. So if you didn't put any additional stipulations on them, you would still have an opportunity to comment on Tim's potential new building as far as making sure it meets our site plan requirement, our architectural requirements, fencing requirements, landscaping, all those type things would still become before the planning commission. But as of right now, it's not an allowed use. I guess the other thing that's kind of interesting about when you look at there's just so many different types of uses allowed within the C2 district, which include automobile repair, also, pest control, all sorts of types of uses are allowed within this district. And I do think there is room for adding contracting to some degree. Now, we don't want heavy equipment or spools of, wire and all sorts of things like that stacked or put in some of these areas, but we would like to see, somebody like Tim's business that just has, some vehicles, some vans, might have some storage, but that would be appropriately behind the screen fence, something like that. A lot of just office space and coordination, things like that would take place there. So I guess that's sort of the preamble to why we would like to get some feedback from you all on whether or not you think it's an appropriate change to the zoning table, and we would add this as a text amendment to our zoning code. And I guess the other thing is we could also require this type of use to be a special use permit, which then we'd have to come up with some criteria specifically towards these specialty trade contractors. So that's kind of really the discussion. And we could actually even cherry pick some of these if you just wanted to use plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and flooring contractors, roofing contractors. We could add those individual lines to the zoning code as well. So you don't have, it's not an all or nothing type thing. We could add those items, and some of them could require special use permits, some of them could be just permitted by right, and that means there are no additional requirements made for them to operate in that area other than they meet our site plan requirements and all our other setbacks, things that are already lined out in the C2 zoning district. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have. I guess the two businesses that do come to mind that are in the C2 district are Freedom Concrete. They're a C2 right next to Steve's Meat Market, and then Harding Heating and Cooling down there on the corner of 83rd and.
So that's the area that Tim wants to put up?
Actually, the area Tim wants to is Mike's got it up on the screen. It's in the C2 district right there in the corner of Golden, right across the street from the Tri-Century Bank. That corner.
That little lot down there that Chick-fil-A sits and stand up in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so what I have shown here is the zoning map. So this amendment would only apply to these areas that are in red. I mean, essentially the kind of the dark red is the C2 district. We have two commercial districts in the city. The one is the downtown area, which is storefronts, that 2-block section of downtown, and then the other is general commercial, which is C2, which is the red that you see.
I guess this is a similar process we went through when we did the allowing automobile sales in the downtown district. We had a discussion on whether we thought that was an appropriate use, and then if it came to the conclusion it was an okay use, then what kind of stipulations did we want to put on that specific type of use. So in some ways it's a very simple, it'll be the exact same process that we went through before. I don't think it needs to be quite as detailed unless we do go down. We are pretty much recommending right off the bat with the automobile dealership a special use permit with had specific criteria lined up. This one, I think we could certainly allow it permitted by right and then just use our other standards that we all have already adopted, unless you think there's some sort of additional criteria that might be more appropriate for all these type uses. And these are all the special, what the NAICS calls specialty trade contractors. And we could even expand it also if you wanted to just look at all construction, but typically some of the heavier uses with larger equipment are in the, actually the heavy M1 zoning district. So,
I'd say most of those, whatever supplies they had would be kept inside a building of some nature versus, outside where it's quite obvious that, they're doing whatever it is they're doing, so.
Looking at the list of things that are permitted compared to the list of things that aren't, I'd much rather have some of these than under special use permit, mining and stuff, and
yeah, we do have quite a few things that are allowed either by special use permit or permitted by right that you think would be easily as compatible as a plumbing company or an air conditioning company.
Yeah, on that point, on line 53, I think kind of the focus of the special use permit in this district seems to be outdoor equipment, storage, and that kind of thing. And, I agree that most of the specialty categories within just the classification we're talking about, most of these folks will probably not have a lot of outdoor storage. But maybe a special use permit is appropriate, just to make sure that nobody thinks they have the right to, park their concrete trucks out there or whatever it may be that's becomes an issue that they've got a right to keep that.
Yeah, and I guess one thing, Tim, if you did want to comment, it's perfectly fine at this stage. I did talk to Patrick a little bit about, of course, if this does advance beyond this point where there's actual discussion and a potential vote, then you'd have to probably leave the room during that discussion. But at this point, Patrick said it's perfectly all right for you to comment and speak about it as a planning commissioner overall about what your thoughts are.
Well, as the company owner, there will not be any vehicles parked outside. All my guys take their vehicles home. Pretty much everything's gonna be kept inside the business, nothing will be outside. Even my Mini X and skid loader, it'll be parked inside as well. So there will probably be nothing outside. And, I will fence the back going into the Meadows area, so. But other than that, there won't be any, I don't like vehicles sitting in the lot anyway, so all my guys take their vehicles home, so.
Right.
Most of my employees don't even come to the office, they go straight to the job site, so that's how we operate. The only people that will come in there is probably service techs to fill out paperwork, but they're in and out within an hour, but they're usually there, by 6:30 and gone by 7:15.
Actually, no doubt that's the way that you run it. Now, it's just that if you open up the whole process in 38,
Yeah.
certainly there are some of those trades on there that might very well need outdoor storage or think they have the right to do it. And I would think doing it for any of that special use permit, it should be permitted as easily as a gun club is, C2 or a racetrack or kind of club. So if we permit those kinds of special use permit, otherwise we would permit these special use permit.
And besides, pardon?
I would agree as well, Rod, Tim, we have no doubt that you would take care of it, but if something should happen and just change hands, then we want to make sure that we have everything contained properly.
Yeah, totally understood. The building we're gonna build, it's gonna match the bank. It's not gonna be looking like a small rectangle commercial building. It's gonna have pitches on the roof, and it's not even gonna look like a plumbing company, believe it or not, so. Yeah, I agree with, whatever we decide to do, so.
I'm sure it will look very nice. when you get finished with it.
This is Todd. Coming from the construction industry, not all contractors operate like the ones that we have in town as far as how they keep their equipment and their buildings. So I think we need to be careful. We've been fortunate that the ones we have in town take care of their stuff and they take care of their property. That's not the case with everybody. So I just want to make sure we don't, that's kind of the main traveled roads, and we want to make sure we keep it looking good and not just open it up to where somebody can come pile a bunch of stuff. And, I think a special use permit's probably the right option, just so we have a chance to evaluate the stuff and not open it up. But like I said, we've been fortunate that these guys take care of their stuff and keep it looking nice, but that's not the case everywhere.
Agreed.
What do you think, Ian?
I agree with what he said. I don't see why not. I know he's gonna take care of it. Special use to me sounds like the way to go.
What do you think?
I kind of go in the same direction, you know, the special use permit, like Todd said, not everybody takes care of their equipment, at least with that, we would have a little leeway.
Control, yeah.
Right. I personally think we need the special use permit also.
I guess if I may, I'd like to ask, I mean, what types of things are we talking about? For instance, Harding, he put up an 8-foot fence around his. He does have some outdoor storage. And he revamped that building. It looks pretty nice from where it was. Is 8-foot fencing something we would require, or types of things like that? I'm sort of looking at some specifics, because at some point with the special use permit, we're gonna have to say you need to do X, Y, and Z. It's not just.
My opinion would be fencing is something that would be important. I mean, Freedom Concrete put up a nice fence, you can't see anything, they keep a bunch of stuff back there. Harding put up his fence. I think it's just having, you know, you could have the outside storage, but as long as we have a way to say, you gotta put up some screening so we can't see it sitting out there or whatever, I don't see why it'd be an issue.
Brett?
Yeah, Roger.
What criteria do you have for 5324? Commercial industrial machinery and equipment rental leasing. Yeah, it should be kind of similar to that, I think, that you don't have a bunch of stuff outside, it probably should work.
Yeah, Roger, I'll kind of answer that. So in the special use, we have a whole article in the zoning regs about special use permits, and talks about procedures that are the same for all of them, talks about how you issue the permits, that it's a public hearing, you look at a site plan, so that's kind of all similar on any special use permit are those requirements, and the site plan gives you the opportunity to put whatever restrictions you think are appropriate in any particular area for a particular use. But then we do have specific requirements relating to particular uses. Mines and quarries is the biggest one. We redid those in the early I think you were on the planning commission during your first stint when we did that. That's the biggest one. But there's also things like bed and breakfast things, pole signs is another one, electronic signs. But not every use that would fall under an SUP has particular requirements associated with it. And I might suggest as one option is that we don't need to define particular use restrictions for specialty contractors. It could be just under the general special use permit with no specific parameters about 8 feet fences or buffering or employees taking vehicles home or any of that. But we could just look at them on a case-by-case basis. I would think that would be probably the cleanest way without diving into.
I definitely agree with that. I don't think it should be any more restrictive than it would be for some of these other uses.
Yeah,
So I go to your general criteria, that sounds right to me.
very good.
As long as we've still got that option, I see no problem with that at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I was thinking, you know, for instance, we have bed and breakfast, so there's a couple small, I mean, they could be very simple things as well. I think the bed and breakfast, there's 2 line items about, you know, the size of the sign and where it can be hung on the residence. I think that was about it. But still, they still have to go through a special use or a site plan process and bring it to the planning commission. So it can be as simple as just putting an S in the box, and then we just go through a special use permit process. Or if there's a couple little particular things insist on, we can add those to the regulations as well.
It also allows the council to weigh in on the decision as well. Where with just a site plan, if it's just allowable in the district and it's site plan, then that only gets seen here at the planning commission.
Yeah, I certainly don't advocate any additional requirements more than it would be for exterminating and pest control services. I mean, there's no reason to make a special rule for these, especially the contractors. Except for Tim, we have to make a special rule.
We'll research other communities to see if they have TIM rules as well. Well, if there's nothing else, then I think we'll plan on calling for the public hearing at the April meeting, and then have a text amendment consistent with the direction and discussion we've had here tonight.
That'll work.
I don't think we need an action.
Are there any other questions for Brad or Mike? Okay. Brad, did you have something else you wanted to?
Yeah, and I guess I'll let Mike take the lead on this. Has to do with the sunflower. We are going to have to do some sort of future land use plan update, and that'll probably be at our next planning commission meeting.
Yeah, so
And
this is probably under staff reports, but if we want to take it now during the meeting, that's fine. So as you remember, when we redid the comprehensive plan in 2019, we redid the future land use map, and we decided at that time, because before then we didn't have any assigned future land use categories assigned to the sunflower property, and we decided that was a mistake, and we were going to assign future land use categories on the sunflower property, just like any other property that might be outside the city limits, but we may expand into it. And this is the land use plan we came up with. Very large areas, very broad brushes, but if you're familiar with where the sunflower property is, generally it's south of 103rd Street and between Lexington Avenue and Evening Star Road. It does have a boot hill that comes up in this area and touches 95th Street. But so all these categories down here are what we put in the comp plan in 2019, and we did that with communication back and forth with SRL, and at the time they were really not in a position where they felt like they could begin marketing the redevelopment. They were at a place where they couldn't transfer title. They were still in the middle of environmental remediation. They still had some lawsuits going on. Well, over the last 6 months or so, they've indicated to us that now the property is they're ready to start their marketing efforts for the economic development of the property. And in fact, they've been involved with us on some responses to some economic development requests that have come down from the state on larger projects, considering maybe some light industrial development out there on the property. And they've indicated a desire, as a result of some of those discussions, for us to take a fresh look at their future land use map. Essentially, what they're saying is the development opportunities that exist there, on the property now and in the foreseeable future, are most closely aligned with light industrial uses, and primarily the e-commerce, the warehouse distribution type uses there. And so they're a little concerned because our mixed use category has a heavy element in the comp plan anyway. It has a heavy element of residential uses, and they don't really see that aligning with their marketing strategy. And then the commercial uses along Lexington Avenue, it's a lot of commercial, and they're not getting a lot of indications that the property will be marketable from a commercial standpoint. So they've asked us to consider a revision to the future land use map, primarily to show light industrial uses for the entire property. Well, not the entire property, at least the northern third or so. And so I've just taken a quick stab at a revision, essentially that would just take those that commercial area and the mixed use area and turn it to light gray on the map, So essentially, we just have light industrial uses shown for the Sunflower property, with the exception of the green belt of the parks land that the Johnson County Parks is going to get, and some office institutional land out on the northwest corner that will be KU's, the University of Kansas property. So we've agreed to initiate that process here, public hearing, consideration of planning commission, and then forward to the city council. It also ties in with some efforts that we're undertaking now to develop master planning for this, what we're calling the Southwest Area Plan. And it's this area between K10 and 103rd Street and west of Lexington that we really see for the next growth in the city, mostly non-residential growth if you just look at the land use map here. But we're doing some master planning toward that. We have some money in the CIP for utility extensions out to this area. And specifically, there's about 300 acres that's all under common ownership out here at 103rd and Edgerton that has been the bullseye subject target of a lot of these big economic development potential projects that have yet to land. But we're doing a particular master plan that we're doing this in conjunction with the EDC. So we're in the middle of that, and I think the spinoff from that might be other changes to some other areas of this future land use map in this area too. But we don't really want to address those right now. That plan is ongoing. The study won't be really probably ready till the summer, if not middle of the summer. And we think just to be responsive to SRL's request, because they're preparing themselves for marketing the property, which probably means annexations into the city, and could mean some development agreements in terms of economic incentives and rezonings and things like that you'll be seeing. So we think the first step in that process to make ourselves ready for that would be revision to the future land use map. So that's it. I think we intend to bring this back in April, either with a discussion item, or maybe we go ahead and call the public hearing. And, at that time, Planning Commission could hold the public hearing and table it till the next meeting if we need further discussion or whatever. So that's coming. It's really something that's been requested by Sunflower, but we're handling it as this is a city staff initiated sort of action. And according to the state statute, we need to be looking at this on a yearly basis, considering changes, recommending changes, as we've done in the past. I don't think we've been good about doing it on a yearly basis, but this exercise will provide that opportunity for us as well.
I suppose, Mike, we don't have to just limit ourselves to just Sunflower if there's some other areas on the future land use. I don't want to get too bogged down in nitpicking the whole future land use plan, but if there is something that we clearly need to change, this would be the time to do it.
Yeah. So that was just, I know it's a lot, and we're throwing it at you all at once, but that process is kind of on a track where we feel like we need to move on it, at least next month, begin in earnest the discussion here.
Well, I'm glad to see it starting that. I think we need it.
Yeah, well, it's been very, very promising, encouraging to hear, start these discussions with SRL. There's avenues, that we're taking there to prepare for these future applications, annexation, rezonings, economic incentives, things like that. So it's like we always hoped it would happen. We always kind of been preparing for this, and back in 2005 when they took ownership of the thing, we thought it was right on the horizon, but turned out it was only 15 years.
Yeah, good thing. First, what's happened from the last 6 months that's now made them think that they're going to get that turnover? Because that seems very contrary to what we heard when they had the informational meeting for the Army, where they said they weren't turning over anything until they were completely done. So has there been some development there?
Yeah, I think it's mostly behind the scenes. I think a couple things have happened. Primarily, SRL has had this ongoing lawsuit between the U.S. Army, the Corps of Engineers, KDHE, and I think that's the only federal. There's been a dispute about the cleanup responsibilities, and those court cases, I believe, are at a point now where those legal impediments, at least that one is cleared. So for the SRL team, that's primarily the biggest one. And I think the Army's. I think the last update they gave, it wasn't last year because of COVID, so it was 2 years ago, right? About this time, I think that was the last time. And yeah, and that was a Corps of Engineers update. The requirement that the whole plant gets cleaned up before any of it gets released for development is part of a pre-development agreement that the SRL had with the Board of County Commissioners, and it's still in place. It's still in place. But talking with SRL, there's reason to believe that the commission might consider a revision to that development agreement that would allow them to develop in phases rather than all at once. So I think those two things primarily.
So my second point was, our future land use map, do we not consider anything north of 91st Street and west of the park?
North of 91st and west of the park. Roger, you're on the phone. Can you see the screen?
I can.
You can? So
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so this area out here, is that where you're talking about where I have my cursor?
Right.
Yeah. No, that's not particularly on the radar screen right now. I know in the past we've had a residential development that was planned in that area, but I think, like Brad says, if there's something else on here that we need to have a look at, we can address it.
But I might suggest that it might be worthwhile if you're doing an update with your land use map to actually just pause to that, because I think when we put the sewer plant in the location that we put it in, the thought was we eventually could run sewer down it.
Yeah, that's the long-term plan, to have some sort of a big pumping facility out here and have a sewer that runs up Edgerton Road to actually
So it might not be a bad idea to get plans for that.
Yeah. We could have a look at that, Roger. Yeah, that would be in probably a far future phase of the sewer development. The current concept to serve anything on Sunflower would essentially be would not be through that, but it would be a regional pumping facility down around 95th and Kill Creek, where the creek crosses under 95th, that would then pump to a utility corridor along Sunflower Road and then up to the sewer treatment plant.
I was just wondering if you wanted to pay for a sewer down Edgerton Road, you had the development land down to the south. Might have been a better idea to kind of have that on the radar.
Yeah. Well, we could throw that.
All that land to the south, it's going to be hard to run down Edgerton Road.
Yeah, to put it in after the fact, you mean?
Yeah, well, that's the problem we have in the middle of town.
Okay, I didn't hear. What did you say? What was your last? I didn't hear that well.
That's the problem we have in the middle of town. We have the development in the middle of town, it kind of makes it hard to run sewer down there.
Yeah, right.
I hate to get through that again.
Yeah, so that's part. I think that's those sorts of concepts are part of what we're looking at in this master plan for this southwest growth area. So the phasing of the sewer extensions is an important part. So we have that area you referenced is shown as low density residential. So your concern is that it gets developed with low density residential, then you can't put a sewer through it to support the higher intensity uses further south.
Right, we're pumping it all back down Western Avenue. Or Sunflower Road.
Yeah. Well, we can have a look at that. We can,
Basically hamstring that property.
yeah. Okay, we can incorporate that into what we're doing.
But if you just want to look at it,
Yeah, sewer phasing is it's always an issue, you know, we kind of have to respond to development pressure because we gotta have somebody to pay for the thing. But at the same time, it's often makes sense to extend through undeveloped areas before they do develop, so funding becomes an issue then. Okay,
You have anything else, Mike?
no, that was it.
Brad?
Well, that's, just wanted to update you on this process with the future land use
Okay.
plan.
Does anybody have any questions for Brad or Mike? Would entertain, so, the next meeting will be April 27th. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Motion to adjourn. We're adjourned. Have fun, Tim.
hey guys, look here.
This conference is no longer being recorded.